Hello, I'm Hannah Rogers, Head of New Business and Client Lead for Blue Yonder Research, and I'd like to welcome you to the campaign for real innovation. Henry Ford once said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. This sums up the challenge of market research. People frame the answer to what do you need within the realms of current context and their lived experiences, verbally and behaviourally. It's a great way of optimising current solutions, but rarely leads to true innovation. Capabilities-based innovation is too focused on the viability of manufacturer, crucial for ultimate success, but limiting during ideation. And just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean to say that you should. I'd love to see clients use techniques such as extreme prototyping to remove the context of habitual product usage and encourage behavioural change. By giving people seemingly irrelevant objects to stimulate thought, we focus on the art of the possible, overriding coping mechanisms to identify new needs and benefit spaces beyond the traditional articulated and unarticulated needs.
Number one, go and talk to your consumer. That will give you new opportunities. There's no question about it. And every business will say, oh yeah, we know our consumer, we know our customer, we know who we're talking to. So when was the last time you personally went out and spoke to your consumer? And not the typical consumer that you think, but the consumer who's either not buying your product and buying your competitors or using your product something differently. That's the number one thing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the root of innovation really, there's got to be a consumer need. There's got to be a job to be done. There's got to be a gap somewhere where a consumer is doing something one way and they should be doing it a completely different way to make their lives easier, really. And I think that's where the best companies who innovate, they really take that and they really drive it home and they really make people's lives easier.
Making the consumer or the shopper the absolute center of everything you do, and really questioning whether you're interpreting that in the right way. We all are guilty sometimes of interpreting things to fit what we want it to say.
That's what I would like to see more. It's more products which are born in the experience of people's life and not born from someone thinking of something in a laboratory.
The nearer we can get to testing in reality in the moment in the store, the better the learnings are better. We can be testing how an idea works on shelf earlier in the process, to really gather all of those learnings.
And use your competitor products. Love your competitor products. If you're not using your products and you're not using your competitor products all the time, then you are not doing your job right in innovation. And don't tell me you can't do it, because I just spent a year, 2 years working in breastfeeding, and I'm a bloke, by the way, I should emphasize this. And I use those products as much as I possibly could to understand and empathize with that consumer at the end.
What I would recommend to clients is that at an early stage of having a concept, you do a kind of make it real or, commercially land it, workshop, whatever you call it, where you bring in your category teams, some of maybe your key sales teams into the conversation to really say, right, this is the concept. How are we going to price it? How are we going to package it? What's the key message for retailers? And really go through that nitty gritty early on, because it might be that you want to tweak your concept to make it really land.
But equally, it's about engaging the retailers on the conversation. So especially if you're going somewhere quite breakthrough, doing something quite different, you're going to be talking about different category solutions. And it's engaging them on that journey so that launch should be easier.
We know that a lot of the big retailers have got real appetite to be involved and engaged early on. And I think if we can engage them early on, you're going to have much more chance of success. But obviously recognising the limitations of that, because you don't always want to launch something as an exclusive.
I think another way to kind of drive more of an innovative mindset is just to consider how more mutuality can be introduced into the approach. And what do I mean by that? I mean, creating wins for not only the company, but the consumer and society. So, we think about things like ESG, sustainability, the environment. I think right now it's more of a nice to have, but in the future I think it will be mandatory. I think it's easier when this is hardwired into the ethos of your brand, but eventually this is going to be a requirement moving forward for anybody.
For me at the moment, the biggest thing that I find really, really difficult is to try and live a sustainable lifestyle. I find that so many things come in single-use plastics. I find that there's so much unnecessary packaging, and I think it's such a big problem. And it may be very naive to say it's a simple thing to try and fix, but it's a real need. A couple of good examples, like fruit and veg is my biggest bugbear. Me and my with what wife we always bang on about, well, why does every bit of fruit and veg come in a completely different type of packaging? So, why do onions come in this net when like potatoes come in a plastic bag? Like, it doesn't really make any sense.
So sustainability by design, if every product was just a little bit better than the one that went before, whether that be in terms of health credentials, so a little bit less salt, a little bit less sugar, etc., or the packaging was a little bit better, what a difference that could make. And I think if that was just a mentality or a sort of a red line that a brand set for itself, that could be a really big benefit to themselves, to society as a whole.
But I think we don't have enough spontaneous creativity. And these are the ones which have made the difference in the past. The people which have such a big tension that they create something just for it.
It is about having wacky ideas and being a bit more edgy and not closing things down before you've really thought them through and tried them out. I think so often as well, like where projects will be stopped because they're not going to deliver, or that in this kind of short term, quite sort of specific way. But very often the concept isn't wrong. It could be a little early. It could be that you haven't quite positioned it in the right way.
To see more diversity of products on the market, because it's really, because we are all different. In the end, when you go to retails, anywhere you've got the same, but at the same time, you would like to have diversity. I feel that we are losing this diversity, and that's why innovation is becoming more complicated.
I think there's some ideas that I have around how do you drive a more innovative culture. I think one idea is just to simply expand your definition of how you think about innovation. We tend to think about it very traditionally as something that's product. But I think that if we reframed our thinking to be more reflective of a total experience, I think that could give birth to new models, to new services, to new offerings.
As we've established, innovation is a huge topic. And it's not just about creativity, it's about relentless practicality. This is just the first step in the campaign for real innovation, and we look forward to giving you practical frameworks to support your business in future. As a final point today, we'd love to leave you with something else to think about: our top tips for innovation.
Yeah, number one, sort your company structure and your culture out, because without changing that, you're never going to change anything. But I think assuming that has been done, I think it does come down to that absolute obsession and clarity and focus at the beginning on the human problem. So we spend a lot of time talking about business objectives or research objectives or consumer needs. Actually, what is the human problem at the heart of this? And then getting to know who you're trying to design for. And so we talk about design thinking. Mars Wrigley doesn't really do target consumer profiling, but for innovation, you do have to hone in on that beachhead market. Who is it we want to absolutely delight and wow, that is then going to spread the word? And how do we know we've hit the mark with this? And then, as we've said before, getting that clarity and aligning ahead of time exactly what success looks like. So whether it's the CSFs or the measures that you need to meet, but also we talk about desirability, feasibility, and viability. Obviously desirability is mainly around consumer, but it could also be retailer, etc. Some of those factors. But that viability piece early on is really important. Like, what does success look like? What do we need to think about? Where do we need to challenge on what the business model might be for this? Like, early on, we might know, like, cost of goods is going to be seriously high, which is meaning pricing is going to be pushing those category benchmarks, and that's a lot of then the challenge you obviously get back at the end. And coming back to being shopper centric on shelf back thinking, trying to kind of get that in there. That's more than three, but I think they're the sort of really key things that I'm quite passionate about.
So top three tips. The first is you have to invest in it. You have to have budget available for trying new things and for improving your systems and your network. And Doesn't have to be much money. You decide how much money that is, but there has to be a pot of money where you can try new things, and it doesn't matter if you lose it all. You then have to prioritize what you do. So the problem you can have is there's too many ideas, and if you're inventing an innovative culture, and everyone's coming at you with fresh ideas, usually often very good and a potential business in itself, you've still only got the same pot of money, so you have to prioritize which ones you do. So have a really good understanding, ask the marketplace which is the most important, and follow that up. And then thirdly, it's really important that you celebrate innovation. You have to have a moment for the person that's come up with this great idea to talk to the business about it and to tell them what they did and where it came from. Because then that leads to another person wanting to share their idea. And, you know, people who don't think they're innovative in those sessions realize how innovative they are, because they just didn't realize that solving problems was being innovative. And you know, if you can bring everyone together once in a while and just celebrate it, and celebrate the good and the bad, let's have a laugh at the bad ones, because that's good fun too. And then take the learnings from that forward, because that in itself can stop somebody else trying the same thing. Then that's really important, and that's critical to a innovation culture.
Three things. So one is there is not one process fits all, and that's really important when you're talking about companies. They tend to want to say, oh, this way has worked, so I want to put it to all the projects. No, each project somehow is different, and you may want to kind of think that it's not one size fits all. The second thing is, for me, is co-creativity. It goes faster, it's more creative, and we all have been there where all the functions works in silo or at best at the same time, but co-creativity is something which is really, really efficient to be innovative. And the last one is work for the people you are trying to sell your product. Think about what they're going to make of your product, how it's going to impact their life. Don't think just about your technology or how you want it to work. I mean, I remember a focus group long ago where we gave people the product in advance to try with instruction how to use it, and then they came back to the focus group with the product. I will always remember this lady who said, you know, the instruction you gave me, they were wrong, but don't worry, I use it the right way. And that was it. You know, you can do whatever you want. That product in that format, people were going to use it that way, not the way we thought. So keep in mind really the end user, because it's their life which is going to be impacted, and they will do whatever they want.
I think the first one, which comes back to what we talked about with that classification, is be really clear the role that the innovation is playing, because depending on where it sits will depend on what are the right level of expectations to set. I think it's really, really easy as a business to get overly excited about a piece of disruptive innovation and set huge volume expectations that are then never met, and then it's deemed a failure. Whereas in actual fact, if we're really clear about the role it's playing and therefore set the right expectations for that, and then you can judge it appropriately. So that's number one. Number two is be really rigorous on the 4 Ps throughout the process. So really assess how well you're delivering against those Ps, and what are the implications of that. So is your product delivering well enough? Is it going to be priced more premium, in which case we need to be really clear what that means. Is the placement right? Can you even see it on shelf? Have you even looked at it on a mock-up shelf? Those kind of things are really critical all the way through, and I think you need to be really ruthless in red flagging to the stakeholders in the business when there's an issue, and then moving on with transparency. So if you make a decision to move on knowing you're not optimal on one of your Ps, that might be the right decision, but you need to then manage down the expectations. So that's the second thing, be rigorous on the 4 Ps. And then the third thing is plan to exit. So most MPD or innovation, sorry, I should use that term, doesn't last in market. Most of it has got a fairly short life cycle. And I think we're all suddenly taken by surprise when after 18 months or 24 months, we have to suddenly take a SKU out. I think we just need to plan for that, recognise that that's a natural cycle, and get ahead of the game and know that we're going to need to either renovate that one or replace it with something. So I would say clear on the role it's playing, be rigorous on your 4 Ps, and plan for exit if it's going to have a relatively short life cycle.
My first tip is a really clear one, which is be 100% clear strategically on why you are doing innovation. Understand the consumer you're trying to reach and the occasion you're trying to reach them, and what role it's going to play for the brand. Is it about equity? Is it about improving margin? Is it about volume? Get your plan done first. It's very easy to jump into, oh, I'd quite like to make a green one of those and run after it. Have a clear plan and hold yourself honest to that plan. The second one would be understand early the right kind of insight work you need to help you. Some projects you don't need any. If you're Gordon's Gin and you're launching another flavour, that bugger's going to sell. You don't need to worry about it, right? You don't need to do it. Understand whether it's formal concept testing or whether it's doing enough upfront work to really understand what the consumers need. Don't allow yourself to be trapped into a process of this is how we do innovation. Every innovation is different. And if you had the same process for all innovation, you'll never launch anything new to world. You'll never launch anything breakthrough. And then I guess number 3, I would say, is tactical isn't a dirty word. It's okay to launch something just for a retailer, or to launch something that you know is going to sell at Christmas and not the rest of the year. That's okay. That will still make you money and it will still build your equity. I think a lot of brands can naively chase the sort of holy grail of we're going to launch something that no one's ever seen before. It's okay to be tactical. It's really tough to get those breakthrough ones. There's no harm in launching some good tactical line extensions, flavor extensions and all that.
To leverage the power of observation, go back to that scientific method. Look, listen, watch what people are doing, watch their behaviors, look at their habits, see what works for them, see what doesn't work for them, seek to understand, know what's happening inside and outside of your industry, look at trends, evaluate and understand the landscape. I think that's one big tip. I think the second tip is to never lose sight of who you're doing it for. There was a great adage when I worked at Procter & Gamble, which is this idea of consumer as boss. You have to know your target audience, who you're designing for, and be ruthless in seeking to delight them. I think the last idea I'd say is be inclusive. Great ideas can come from everywhere. They can come up, down, below, across. Likewise, great ideas can be designed for all different types of people and groups. Leverage multifunctional teams that are integrated, ensure diversity and representation in your product design teams. And maybe you asked for 3, but maybe I'll give a 4th one that's self-explanatory, which is don't be afraid to fail. Sometimes it's really baked in the corporate culture that, holy crap, we have to be success. But I tell you, if every scientist gave up after they failed, we would not have any of the inventions that we have today.
Number one, everything starts with the consumer. Number 2, everything starts with the consumer up here. No, being facetious now. Everything starts with the consumer. Go and understand who she is or who he is and why. You are not the target consumer. You absolutely need to understand what's driving them, what's changed. You need to be talking to them day in, day out. That's number 1. Number 2, find the right team. So innovation is successful because you have the right people in your organization, whether it's within your immediate team or through your agencies and things. It's driven by people who are passionate and tenacious. And that means you need to find those individuals. If your line manager sucks his teeth every time you kind of give them a good idea, don't tell your line manager, just go and do it anyway, or go talk to their boss or their boss's boss. It's all about people. And if you can excite somebody about your idea, then you've got an opportunity to success. And the third one is prototype and fail fast. So write your concept tomorrow, go and test it with the consumer, build your prototype in the lab, test it with your sister, doesn't matter. Get it out there, put it on Facebook, put it on Kickstarter, find out if it's a successful business idea or not. Try and avoid the continual drag that comes with traditional innovation. And maybe the fourth one is be absolutely bloody minded and excited and confident in your idea, because that's how Elon Musk is successful and Steve Jobs is successful. They believed in what they did. And whether you're changing the size of a Mars bar or colour of a fruit corner, it doesn't matter. You absolutely have to believe it. If you don't believe it, and then you shouldn't be working it. Walk away and go do something even cooler instead. So
yeah, I think one of the top bits of advice I guess I would give in terms of innovation is really believe in what you're trying to innovate on or what you're trying to create. I think that sort of passion and energy that you can share is quite infectious. So I think that's really, really important. I also think, that not only do you need to believe, but you also need to be a bit of a salesperson in terms of your idea, and really make sure you understand, where the gap is for this product, or what is the consumer need, and really understand, who is it that this product is gonna help. So then when you are having those conversations internally, it's a lot easier for someone, if they do challenge you, for example, you can say, well, look, this is really going to be helping our millennial consumers, who need energy to go to university or whatever it may be. So I think that's also really important. And I think the last point that I would probably give, which is also very important, is don't give up, really. If you really believe in something, just see it, really just try and get it through and get it over the line. And if it fails, that I think personally is a learning in itself. But yeah, I think it's really just keep that fire in your belly and keep going. Obviously you're going to face challenges along the way, but I think that with the right passion and the right attitude and storytelling, I think you can really get your innovation over the line. But yeah, I think the real key is going to be the consumer insight and the sort of job to be done, let's say.
There are some absolutely outstanding tips there from people who haven't just talked about innovation, they have lived and breathed it at leading global brands. So thank you so much for that. There's some bits that I just want to reiterate for our own experiences. It really is about being consumer-centric, absolutely focused on the need, knowing and understanding the people who need these products, who will be using them. What does their reality really look like? How will they behave? What will they do? How will this fit into their lives? How can we make it better for them? Really focus on your consumer. Secondly, for me, it's about this cross-channel. No longer can we just think about the confines of a supermarket. What is happening in grocers, what's happening in convenience, what's happening in discounters, but what is also happening in the e-commerce world? What opportunities does that open up to us for innovation? Test. Even if it's very early stages, just test it. Just find out minimum viable product. What do people think? How do they feel? How do they think about this innovative solution? And what do they really feel about this idea? Just find out early on, are we onto something? Can this go further, or do we need to pause, progress, or pivot? Think big and think differently. And this is one of my favourite things to do in the world. You can always narrow something down. You can always make it simpler. You can always make it more relevant for now. If you start big, if you start with this disruptive idea, you can bring it down, you can work it back to your core. But if your ideas are only here, if your ideas start as just been incremental or even step change, you're only going to deliver to your core. So really make sure you're playing with the big spaces, put those outliers into research, really understand just what is possible, because that's where true innovation lies. And finally, I think practically, you've got to engage stakeholders. They need to be inspired. You need to take them on the journey with you, whether that's internally or externally. You've got your internal stakeholders, but you have the grocers, you have the buy-in teams that will need to get this onto the supermarket shelf. Get yourself an edge with them. Get them involved in the process. Think up front, well, where will this be on the supermarket shelf? What's the packaging going to be like? What price will people actually pay for it? Because when you've thought about these details quite early on, it gives you the better chance of commercial success in the long run. You've got a stronger picture to get that investment, to get you to the next level of innovation, and to actually make your idea a reality.